Welcome to Ezra's Chronicles, a space where faith, poetry, and wisdom are embraced. Today is Saturday, February the 7th, 2025. Today's poet in review is the iconic T.S. Eliot. So, without further ado, the life and poetry of T.S. Eliot. Today, we step into the mind of one of the most influential poets of the 20th century, Thomas Stearns Eliot. Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1888, Eliot's journey took him across continents, through doubt and faith, and into the depths of modernist poetry. His words, sharp as a scalpel, carved a new path in literature. Raised in a wealthy and intellectual family, Eliot's earlier years were steeped in literature and philosophy. He studied at Harvard, where he encountered the French symbolists, Dante, and the metaphysical poets, each leaving an indelible mark on his future works. But it was England that would shape him most. In 1914, he crossed the Atlantic and soon found himself immersed in London's literary scene. It was here that he met Ezra Pound, the poet who recognized Eliot's genius and helped him publish his groundbreaking poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Eliot, let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. A poem of uncertainty, alienation, and modern disillusionment, Prufrock shattered traditional poetic forms. The world was entering a new age, and Eliot was its poet. Then came 1922. The world was reeling from the First World War, so society was fractured, and Eliot captured this despair in The Wasteland, a chaotic multilingual masterpiece that depicted the spiritual emptiness of the modern world. Eliot. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land. With its fragmented structure and haunting imagery, The Wasteland redefined poetry, challenging readers to piece together meaning in a fractured world. But Eliot's journey was far from over. Though a master of modernist despair, Eliot's later work turned toward faith and redemption. In four quartets, he explored time, spirituality, and salvation. Having converted to Anglicanism, he sought meaning beyond the ruins of modernity. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. T.S. Eliot's words endure. His poetry wrestled with the anxieties of his time, but his questions about time, faith, and the human existence are timeless. A poet of modernity, yet deeply rooted in tradition, Eliot reshaped literature forever. I've selected 3 poems of Eliot's to share. The first is Aunt Helen, the second, Cousin Nancy, the third is Morning at the Window. Aunt Helen, T.S. Eliot. Miss Helen Slingsby was my maiden aunt and lived in a small house near a fashionable square, cared for by servants to the number of 4. Now when she died, there was silence in heaven, and silence at her end of the street. The shutters were drawn, and the undertaker wiped his feet. He was aware that this sort of thing had occurred before. The dogs were handsomely provided for, but shortly afterwards the Barrett died too. The Dresden clock continued ticking on the mantelpiece, and the footman sat upon the dining table, holding the second housemaid on his knees, who had always been so careful while her mistress lived. The next poem, Cousin Nancy. Miss Nancy Ellicott strode across the hills and broke them, rode across the hills and broke them, the barren New England hills, riding to hounds over the cow pasture. Miss Nancy Eliot smoked and danced all the modern dances, and her aunts were not quite sure how they felt about it, but they knew that it was modern. Upon the glazing shelves kept watch Matthew and Waldo, guardians of the faith, the army of unalterable law. Finally, morning at the window. They are rattling breakfast plates in basement kitchens and along the trampled edges of the street. I am aware of the damp souls of housemaids sprouting despondently at area gates. The brown waves of fog toss upon me, twisted faces from the bottom of the street, and tear from a passerby with muddy skirts, an aimless smile that hovers in the air and vanishes along the levels of the roof. Well, that's it. I hope I have whetted your creative appetite for learning more about T.S. Eliot and poetry in general. This is Ezra Godson. Till next time, Godspeed and farewell.